Hello, American Prestige listeners. It's Derek. I am joined, as always, I guess listeners and viewers, joined as always by Danny Bester, my friend and comrade. And we're here to answer another one of your questions. Those of you who are subscribers to American Prestige need to sign up for the Discord. And you can ask us questions too. We're answering one a week here on YouTube, and it's exclusive to YouTube. We're trying to get people to sign up for that as well. So it's a multi-step process. You got to subscribe to the podcast, then you got to sign up for the Discord, then you got to sign up for the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube site, and everything will be right with the
Our
world.
listeners love process. They're definitely a process-focused bunch.
Too. Yeah. So this week's question, Danny, we've got from kchaw or KC Haw. I don't know how to pronounce any of these. Kchaw. Yeah, there you go. Kchaw. So this question is, just how dead is neoliberalism? I've heard several people say that it's dead, and I guess from an international perspective, that might be true to some extent. But as a mode of governance within countries, it still seems to be dominant, at least in the West, broadly speaking. From a Canadian point of view, it's been interesting to see Trump's tariff shenanigans cause panic among the political class, but their proposed solutions just seem to be free trade deals with other countries along the same race to the bottom lines as USMCA. Similarly, proposals for how to deal with this strange new world run the same old gamut of tax credits, deregulation, P3 projects, direct subsidies for the private sector, and continued chipping away at the welfare state. So what's different?
It's a good question. So I think that there were a couple of ways to approach it. During the Biden administration, there was a kind of chorus of people on the liberal left who were claiming that Biden's Inflation Reduction Act or the supposed infrastructure spending signaled the end of neoliberalism. 1 second. Keep it in. That's right, everybody. We're recording these live.
You get all of it. Yeah,
you get all of it, baby.
You get all of it.
So that sort of turn to spending and infrastructure spending and elements of the Green New Deal that were incorporated into various legislation indicated that neoliberalism was dead. And I think some critics of the left, myself included, were critical of that, as critics of the left are wants to be. That we were saying that, though, that these were certainly shifts in some regard. The neoliberal governing logic continued to dominate. Then there's the mercantilism or the neo-mercantilism of the second Trump administration, which appears set. We're recording this on March 31st. Tariffs are about to go into effect in a couple of days to do with cars, and there might be retaliatory tariffs from China, Japan, and elsewhere. That the neo-mercantilism of Trump suggests that neoliberalism is at an end. And so I would say that personally I'm a bit skeptical of all of these claims, because I do think that the governing logic of both international relations and domestic economies in the North Atlantic world are still defined by the deregulation of certain segments of the economy, particularly the corporate sector and the financial sector, that were hallmarks of neoliberalism. I mean, neoliberalism, as many people have argued, Quinn Slobodian perhaps most famously, but others as well, is not necessarily about total free markets and deregulation, but it's about deregulation of very particular aspects of the political economy. So the military is still quite large, and I don't think DOGE is going to change that, but finance and corporations, finance is allowed to basically do what it wants. Private equity, hedge funds, corporate venture capital, and corporations are essentially allowed to conglomerate into larger and larger monopolies, which are hallmark features of the neoliberal era, and that continues apace. So what I think you're seeing more is that there's an underlying governance logic of neoliberalism that has accreted over the past 40 years since the mid to late 1970s, and that there are now a melange of other elements, whether you get pseudo-social spending like in the Biden administration, or it's not pseudo, it just wasn't very large in terms of the entire political economy, or the neo-mercantilism of Trump overlaid on a neoliberal structure. So it's something new, I think. But then again, you still had Fordist elements, quote unquote, mixed economy elements in even the height of neoliberalism. So you'll still see that operate today. But Derek, what do you think?
It's interesting because when I hear people say neoliberalism is dead, I didn't take it the way that I guess is meant in this question, that it's like a dead and buried ideology. I take it as it's incapable of change or adjustment. So it's intellectually dead, or creatively dead, in the sense that it's just stultifying at this point. Like there doesn't seem to be much juice left in the idea that you can adjust the overall schematic to respond to criticism, or to adjust in any way to lived reality, even after COVID, which you would think would have been a major shock to the system. We just tried to go back to the way things were, and I guess I sort of view this in the same way that I view politics. Like we had the 4 year shock of Trump won, and then everybody just invested all their hopes of going back to brunch and Joe Biden, and that brought us Trump too. It's interesting to think about it in terms of, is it just dead and gone? And yeah, I don't know how you can say that when you look at what Trump is doing. If you get past the gloss, if you get past the stuff that seems to get all the attention for, I guess, challenging neoliberal structures, or neoliberal dogma in terms of the tariffs, for example, and get into what Doge is doing. Like it's just straight up neoliberalism. Like they're firing
Privatization, yeah.
everybody from jobs that are probably necessary. I mean, I'm sure there's always waste and whatever, fraud and abuse, the famous tagline that everybody uses built into the government. But when you eliminate entire agencies, or effectively eliminate entire agencies, you are eliminating things that somebody at some point will say, we shouldn't have gotten rid of that. But the solution will not be, let's put that agency back together. Let's put back, whatever we destroyed in the Department of Education, or whatever we destroyed in Health and Human Services, or USAID, or whatever. It'll be, let's contract that out to the private sector. And that's going to be the operating principle, which is, privatization. They are coming for Medicare. They're coming for Medicaid, certainly. They're probably going to come for Social Security, and all of that's going to take on the form of privatization of, whether it's health savings accounts, or letting people invest their Social Security money in the stock market, or whatever harebrained thing that's been considered and discarded for good reason is probably going to come back around. And it all goes back to, how can we take public sector money and funnel it into the private sector? Internationally, I mean, you look at the way the global financial system works, still is fundamentally based in a neoliberal structure. It's still based in the operating principles of the IMF, which are austerity. They're deficit above all. Cutting, forcing particularly the developing world to focus on cutting social services in the name of balancing budgets. And that hasn't changed. Even the IMF itself has done, people have written papers for the organization, say, hey, we should probably get away from this neoliberal structure. And they just don't. I mean, even with the acknowledgement that that the IMF has caused a lot of pain and a lot of upheaval around the world in the way that it has operated, there's still no impetus to really change. They're still doing fundamentally the same things. The European Union, I mean, they finally, the European Union is finally talking about relaxing rules on deficit spending for one thing. And what is that? Military spending.
Defense,
That's it.
yeah.
That's it. That there's not going to be any relaxation of, they did some common COVID relief funding, which was a miracle, basically, to get out of that block, given how obsessed it is with deficits and austerity. But that's over now, and they're back to, everything's got to be balanced. We might give you a little more leeway, but only if you spend on defense and only if you spend on European contractors. It just permeates everything. Like I think it's going to take more than a little bit of a backlash under Biden, where you had to like relabel some things or maybe try a little bit more spending than you might have done otherwise, or Trump coming along and doing whatever the hell he's doing with tariffs, which I still can't figure out. But it's going to take more than that to really excise this fundamental principle from the way things work.
And I think it just shows what happens when there is no genuine political economic alternative. That effectively, and I know some people disagree with me, but at this point, I really don't know how. You have the kleptocratic capitalism of a Russian Federation, or you have the state capitalism of China, or you have the neoliberal capitalism of the United States. So the lack of a genuine political economic alternative, I think, allowed us neoliberalism to just truck along. And the fact that wealth has become so concentrated is that it essentially depoliticizes generations of people in the sense that they're really unable to organize because their lives are so difficult, so that they constantly have to be living paycheck to paycheck and worried about what's coming next, and anxious about a medical catastrophe or really any catastrophe because they don't have money to pay for it. So I find it difficult to see what could push neoliberalism in another direction, barring some type of exogenous catastrophe, whether it's a war, or whether it's climate change, whether it's a meteor hitting, or whether it's like Alan Moore in Watchmen, as sort of transdimensional octopus. And that was essentially the point that Moore was making. I think it was incredibly nihilistic, but the whole argument of Watchmen was that without an exogenous force, Nixon's just going to be elected to his fourth term or whatever it is. That something needs to change.
It was nuclear war, right? There was going to be nuclear war between the U.S. and the Soviets,
right?
Without something, because humans can't,
right,
come together or can't change on that scale without.
Right, but the idea being that security logic,
some existential threat,
right, was operating on its own. And it does seem, again, like I've said many times, this is kind of what Marx warned against, that this could kind of just function on its own. It doesn't need human will. I would say pretty clearly, to me at least, capitalism, both in this country and elsewhere, isn't serving the greatest number of people to achieve their higher ends, but is immiserating and destroying lives over and over again. And now the richest guy on earth now has a direct say in defunding, cancer research and AIDS drugs in Africa. So we're at a pretty grim moment, and it seems like neoliberalism is chugging along, albeit with slightly different overlays and different elements of the political economy. But it doesn't seem to me like it's really dead.
Do you think? I've wondered this a lot, and the circumstances are obviously different. There's no great power competition that's really urging anybody into scientific achievement. It's all funneled into military,
As it should be
at this point. But a national challenge like getting to the moon, would that be enough to rally people and to get rid of this level of apathy? And sort of, if you took on something like that, and I know people have tried to build movements like that around getting, around defeating cancer or any number of other things, it would take a tremendous amount of political will. Let's stipulate that it's not going to happen, but could that be the kind of thing that shakes things up in the way that you're talking about?
I don't know. I mean, this is a lot of my argument related to the notion that the 21st century is really a century in which ideology matters less, because whether you're talking about Sputnik in terms of the Soviet Union, or NASA in terms of the United States, or the Peace Corps, or the Alliance for Progress, all these 60s.
Which we hollowed out through neoliberalism. We privatized it. We gave Elon Musk billions of dollars instead of just keeping NASA going.
Yeah, I think it's a great choice. But I think that people believed in things. And I think like nihilism is one of the defining features of our era in terms of belief. So it seems hard for me to see that happening. Like even the elites don't really believe in anything anymore. And that's really never a good sign. So again, like this is a moment, as I think I've said before, of stasis and decay, which is frustrating and upsetting and difficult. But I think, I guess, identifying that would, in theory, be the first step to move beyond it.
And this is all to say, I mean, they're what they're doing now in Doge and hollowing out, university grants and science funding, all those agencies is working in the opposite direction of something that I'm talking about. I just wonder because, as you said, part of the reason for the apathy is people are living so precariously. They're one, trip to the hospital away from
Financial ruin. Yeah.
absolute financial ruin. They're one catastrophe away, barely making it. Rent. People are struggling to buy homes now. It's all. There's a lot more weight on people's shoulders, but there's also, I think, another thing that contributes to that apathy is that you just look around and there's no sense of anything being possible anymore. Like there's no sense of government or really any institution being capable of doing something of the same caliber as like we're going to put a man on the moon, which the utility of that we can argue about, but just that level of displaying that something great is possible, that
human
there are things that you
achievement.
can achieve. It just seems to be completely missing.
Yeah, and then the question is that related to the gerontocracy? And there's actually a lot of energy just bubbling under, bubbling under the various 79-year-olds and 80-year-olds who govern our society, and that may well be, but I think it's a kind of a wait and see approach. That maybe there is some hope, maybe there is some direction, but right now it's clearly a moment of stasis and otherwise a moment of decay.
My pessimistic take on this is not only do you have to get rid of the gerontocrats, the 90-year-olds, but all the people who are younger than them who have worked their way up into positions of leadership have done so under the auspices of those same 90-year-olds and have basically the same worldview.
Old people's idea of young people.
That too. Like Hakeem Jeffries is not one of these people, but he's virtually, from what I can tell, from affect and ideology, indistinguishable from any of the other 90-year-olds who are running the country.
Right, and that's a structural issue, and so I think it's the first step in changing things, Derek, is diagnosing them. So everyone,
and
thank
subscribing
you.
to American Prestige.
Well, that's the most important. That's really the only way to break through the morass, the impasse, as it were. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. We love you. And as always, keep on rocking in the free
world. We have to
world.
say that at the end of these dismal questions and answers, but we do. We it's not completely helpless, right?
Sure.
Let's just go with that.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.